Today I'm gonna replace the front engine mount for the Acura MDX 2003. It's a hydraulic system and it has a vacuum on the underneath. The reason I'm replacing the front engine mount is because I feel a tug every time I hit the gas in the car, as though the engine is kind of loose. To get to the front engine mount, I'm gonna remove the battery. I'm going to start making room so that I can pull out the engine mount. I'm actually going to also remove the starter. It just seems like there's things you got to remove in order to get to the engine mount. It doesn't look like you can get it out from underneath, so I'm going to do it from the top. I'm actually going to remove the cover and this side panel here to give me more visibility. Okay, the battery's out. Now I have a cover. There's a little, just push on this little clip to pull that out. Push out the cable off of this connector. Okay, so if you tilt it forward, the cover's off. I'm going to take off this other side panel here. Just twist these. So I took the this hose, and I flipped it on top of this lip that comes out on the side, just so that I can start exposing some of the nuts and screws that I may need to take off to disconnect the starter. Some items to disconnect. You can see that, disconnected that. There's a screw I need to remove. I disconnected this one cable. This cable is still attached to the starter. There's a metal bracket right here. I'm going to remove this little screw, so that way this connector will come off. And that should disconnect all the cabling from the starter. I'm using an 8mm wrench to remove that little screw. To remove this green cable, squeeze and press that and pull up. So that removes this. But we need to remove it from this metal brace. This is the rest of the green cable. So if you squeeze, there's a little lever you squeeze and you push down. You can see there now this cable's loose. Gives a lot more room. Okay. 14mm with an extender. I went ahead and loosened it already, but I'm going to remove the top bolt. Then on the opposite side, underneath the starter, there's another similar bolt, and then I'll have to take out. Okay, I was able to loosen it, and I'm just going to take off the bottom one and then come back to the top and take out the top, and the starter should just pull right on out. When you pull out the bottom bolt, there's this metal brace that's inside of it, so make sure when you reinstall it, this metal brace goes back in. The starter is now loose. You can see here. I'm going to need both hands, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this hose out of the way, and with my right hand pull out the starter. As you can see, the engine mount is now open, available. To make more room, I'm going to remove this little pipe here. It's just 10mm. Okay, pull up slowly. You can move it a little bit side to side until it pops out. To remove the very center nut, this set of cables are on the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a 14mm socket and remove this metal brace to remove all these cables, which are right on top of the nut here. The nut is a 17 millimeter. You can see that pushing these cables up now, I have a lot more room. As I loosen that center, I may need to lift up the engine a little bit. I push down the green cable to get it out of the way. But now what I need to do is I need to put a jack, and I'm going to put it up against the transmission here, the engine. So I'm going to hold it so that it holds it, because I'm going to start loosening the bolts. You can see it. The very center nut is loose. I'm going to go ahead and start loosening up the top one. The top one is loose. I'm going to go from underneath the car and loosen the one you see in the bottom right. There, 14 millimeter wrench. It's a little painful, but it's very slowly removing the bolt on the bottom. We're using a 14 millimeter wrench. They're not on very tight, but they don't turn much. I'll move on to this one afterwards. The bottom bolts are off from the side support. I'm going to go to the top and remove the top bolt in the center one so that I can remove the side support. Removing the top. All the bolts are off. The center nut's off. This is all loose. Push forward this way and then lift up. The next thing I need to do is remove the bolts from the front motor mount. With an extension and a 14 millimeter socket, I checked there's enough room to reach the 4 bottom bolts. And I'm going to go ahead and now put my wrench, take these off. Now working on the 2 front driver side. So the passenger side 2 bolts are out. The front engine mount is loose. Now I need to disconnect the vacuum hose. Here's the front engine motor mount. It's all moving around, it's all loose. Basically it's just gone. Here's the new one, just solid, doesn't move. I'm gonna now start the installation. I'm gonna drop this in. I'm gonna put the 4 bolts in. Here's the vacuum hose. I gotta connect it in. Put the 4 bolts back in. Make sure that when you put it back in, it goes in this particular direction. You can see there's like a mouth right here that goes facing towards the front of the back of the car, and there's a little niche right here. I'm gonna go now and put in the 4 bolts. Bolt this down. You know, the vacuum hose seems a little very wide and it slipped in way too easily. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut about there, so there's a good section. To put the bolts in, it was much easier from underneath. You can see the hose is in and the bolts are in, but I need to, from the top, tighten them. Bolts are tightened. The next thing I'm gonna do, put in the side brace. Since this one is higher, it doesn't clear here at the top. So I'm gonna have to use the jack and raise the engine. There's where I put the jack. So I lifted it. The brace fell right in place. To get the bolts into the brace, I realized that it's better to pull it out all first. Put these bolts, the bottom 2 bolts in. If I put the brace in, then I don't have room to put the bolt. So again, put the bolt in on both ends, then take the whole brace and slide it up. Then I'm going to put the center one, the top center. I'm going to put the center nut on. I'm going to leave it loose so that it jiggles and it makes it easier for me to put these bolts in. Okay, the two bottom bolts are in. I'm gonna do the top bolt. So the top one's tightened. The nut now is as hand tight as I can make it. I'm gonna drop the engine so that the weight is on the engine mount, and then we'll finish tightening the nut. The jack is out. The jack is now off. I'm gonna tighten the nut some more. You'll notice the little notch there is aligned, so it looks good. I'm gonna tighten it a little bit more. No torque specification, just tighten that center nut, and then we'll continue assembling the rest of the parts. The next thing I'm gonna do is put the starter in. I'll bolt in the starter. For the bottom of the starter, make sure you put the bolt to this green cable connector. Now that the starter is bolted, start connecting these wires on the bottom. Connect this metal brace onto the back of the starter. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to get the little nut for it. Now that the little metal brace is connected, I'm going to take this nut and connect this cable. The last cable to connect is this one. Connect it right there. Connect these cables back up. A bolt that goes through here. The bolt is in. Make sure there's a little lip right here. Make sure it's to the side. Now I'm going to connect this green cable to the bottom of the metal. Now I'm going to connect cables together. I'm now going to pull this off this lip. Connect these two hoses back up. Make sure none of these hoses are disconnected. Connect this back up. Bring in the plastic cover. Cover is in. Connect this back up. Gonna snap this back into the hole. Put the battery back in. Battery's in. Now I'm gonna connect. Very important, I almost forgot. This is the transmission oil little dipstick pipe. So I gotta plug it in. The washer on it looks fine, so I'm gonna leave it as is. And I'm gonna now put the cover. I'm gonna put the top cover and I'm done. Car's put together. It's not too bad of a job.